The cold silence of space was broken by the low hum of engines and the faint glimmer of light reflecting off the dark metal hulls of the massive alien warships. The Naraxi Dominion had arrived. Their fleet stretched across the blackness of space like a metal storm, each ship bristling with advanced weaponry and energy shields that shimmered like liquid glass. The lead ship, a colossal dreadnought named Voidfang, hovered menacingly above Earth, its shadow casting darkness over the planet's fragile blue atmosphere. Inside the United Earth Defense Command, UEDC, headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. Red lights blinked furiously across control panels, and the low hum of alarms filled the room. Admiral Jack Riker stood at the center of the command deck, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the holographic display of the approaching fleet. His face was lined with years of warfare, but today the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. A young officer rushed toward him. "Admiral, the Naraxi fleet has broken orbit. They're moving into attack formation." Jack's jaw tightened. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Open a channel to their command ship." A moment later, the massive holographic form of Commander Cole of the Naraxi Dominion appeared on the central screen. Cole was tall and imposing, his dark metallic armor gleaming under the artificial light. His reptilian eyes glowed a sickly yellow as his mouth curled into a mocking smile. "Humans." Cole's voice was deep and laced with contempt. "You have 1 hour to surrender. If you refuse, we will reduce your planet to ashes." Jack stepped forward, his shoulders squared, his face a mask of calm determination. "Commander Cole," he said, his voice steady, "this is Admiral Jack Riker of the United Earth Defense Command. You are violating Earth's sovereignty. This is your first and final warning. Depart now or face the consequences." Cole's smile widened, revealing sharp teeth. "Consequences," he hissed. "Your species is primitive. Your weapons are outdated. What could you possibly do to stop us?" Jack's eyes narrowed. "Try us." Cole's image flickered and vanished as the transmission cut off. An uneasy silence settled over the command deck, broken only by the soft hum of the control systems. A young officer turned toward Jack. "Sir, do you think they'll listen?" Jack's gaze hardened. "No." Suddenly, the command deck shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and an alarm blared through the speakers. "Admiral," someone shouted, "they've started firing." Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Jack could see it happening. Streaks of burning plasma cutting through the void, slamming into Earth's orbital defense platforms. Explosions lit up the dark sky as human satellites and defense stations were torn apart. Debris rained down toward the planet, turning into fiery trails as they burned through the atmosphere. Earth defense grid is down to 43% capacity. An officer called out, "They're targeting our main shield generators." "Deploy squadrons," Jack barked. "Get every available pilot in the air. Now." Across the Earth, fighter hangars roared to life. Pilots in sleek combat suits sprinted toward their ships as technicians fueled and armed them with rapid precision. Lieutenant Kara Riker, Jack's daughter, slid into the cockpit of her fighter, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. Her ship, Valkyrie, hummed to life beneath her. "Kara," Jack's voice came through her headset. "You have one objective. Protect the shield generators. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Kara smiled tightly as her ship lifted off the ground and shot toward the battle above. "Copy that, Dad." In orbit, the Naraxi fleet's capital ships advanced, their long spires glowing with charged plasma. Fighters swarmed out from the motherships like locusts, engaging human squadrons in vicious dogfights. Explosions lit up the battlefield as human and alien ships tangled in a deadly dance of lasers and missiles. Kara weaved through the chaos, locking onto an enemy fighter, Fox 2. She called out as 2 missiles streaked from her ship and struck the enemy craft. It erupted into a ball of flame and debris. "Nice shot, Valkyrie," her squadmate Bonner shouted over the comms. "Stay on my wing," Kara replied, diving to avoid a barrage of plasma fire. Inside the UEDC headquarters, Jack watched the battle unfold through the holographic display. His jaw tightened as more human ships were torn apart. He turned toward his tactical officer. Status on the planetary shields. Failing, sir. We've lost contact with Grid 5 and Grid 6. Jack's hand curled into a fist. He turned toward the comms officer. Activate Project Revenant. The comms officer's eyes widened. Sir, are you sure? Do it, Jack growled. Far beneath the Earth's surface, deep within a classified military facility, a hidden hangar opened. A sleek black warship, shaped like a predatory bird, rose from the depths. Its hull shimmered as it activated its cloaking field. Its AI core came to life with a soft pulse of blue light. Project Revenant online. A cold mechanical voice confirmed. Kara's ship shuddered as a blast from a Narraxi cruiser grazed her hull. I'm hit, she shouted. Bonner, cover me. I've got you, Bonner replied, firing at the cruiser's weapon systems. Suddenly, the cruiser exploded from within. The blast so powerful it tore the ship apart in a cascade of fire and debris. Kara's eyes widened. What the hell was that? Through the smoke and chaos, a dark silhouette emerged. The Revenant warship. It uncloaked, its sleek black frame cutting through the debris like a shadow. Its plasma cannons fired in rapid succession, cutting down enemy ships with terrifying precision. Jack's voice came through the comms. That is our ace. Cole's face reappeared on the command screen, his smile replaced by a scowl. What is that ship? Jack's expression was cold. Your end. The Revenant cut through the enemy fleet, its advanced targeting systems exploiting weaknesses in the Narraxi defenses. Human forces rallied behind it, striking back with renewed strength. Explosions rocked the battlefield as the tide began to turn. Inside the command ship, Cole's expression darkened. Fire the ion cannon. A massive pulse of energy built up along the spine of the Voidfang and fired toward the Earth's surface. Jack's eyes widened. No. Kara pushed her ship toward the beam's trajectory. I can intercept it. Negative, Jack barked. Kara, fall back. Not happening, Dad. Kara locked her weapons onto the beam's source and fired. Her missiles struck the ion cannon's core, causing the chain reaction. The weapon exploded, but the shockwave struck Kara's ship, sending it spinning into the debris field. Kara, Jack shouted. Her ship spiraled out of control, alarms blaring. Kara gritted her teeth, trying to stabilize the craft. I'm not done yet, she whispered. Through the smoke and flames, the Revenant emerged, positioning itself between Kara's ship and the incoming enemy fleet. Its cannons glowed bright blue as it prepared to fire. Jack's voice came through the comms. Commander Cole, you were warned. The Revenant unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, cutting through the enemy capital ship. Cole's command deck erupted in flames as the ship began to break apart. His final scream echoed through the comms before the transmission cut off. The alien fleet began to retreat. Kara's ship stabilized. Jack's voice was calm. Good work, Kara. Kara smiled weakly. Told you we weren't done yet. As the smoke cleared, the remaining human ships regrouped. Jack leaned against the console and sighed in relief. They got the message, he said. Loud and clear. The battlefield was quiet for a moment, but it was the calm before the storm. The wreckage of destroyed ships floated aimlessly through space, illuminated by the faint glow of distant stars. The Narraxi fleet had pulled back slightly after the destruction of their command ship, but Jack knew it wasn't over. The Dominion didn't retreat, they regrouped. Admiral Jack Riker stood at the center of the command deck, his hands gripping the edges of the control console as he watched the tactical display. The Revenant had bought them some breathing room, but the enemy fleet was already repositioning itself. The red markers on the holographic map representing Narraxi warships were multiplying. They were bringing in reinforcements, a lot of them. Sir, the comms officer called out, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures. 20? No, 30 more ships inbound. Jack's jaw tightened. He leaned toward the display and focused on the incoming signatures. Massive capital ships, heavily armored with plasma cannons, were preparing to close the gap. The Revenant had proven effective, but it was one ship against an entire armada. "Get me a line to the Revenant," Jack ordered. The screen flickered, and Kara's face appeared, sweat trickling down her forehead. Her cockpit was dimly lit, warning lights flashing behind her. "Dad, I know what you're going to say." "I'm fine." Jack's eyes softened for a brief second, but the urgency in his voice remained. "Kara, you need to pull back. They're bringing in heavy reinforcements. We can't hold this position." Kara's eyes narrowed. "We're not running. We hit them hard." "No, while they're regrouping." Jack's brow furrowed. He was about to argue when another officer shouted, "Admiral, the Revenant's cloaking field is destabilizing. How long until it fails?" Jack demanded. "Less than 5 minutes." Jack's mind raced. If the Revenant's cloaking failed, the Narraxi would focus all their fire on it. And without the Revenant, humanity didn't stand a chance. He turned toward his tactical officer. "Give me a strike plan." The officer pulled up the battlefield map. "If we concentrate fire on the lead capital ship, we could force them to break formation. It'll give the Revenant time to recharge its cloaking field." "It's risky," Jack muttered. Kara's voice cut through the static. "I'll lead the attack." Jack's eyes sharpened. "Absolutely not. Bonner and I can handle it," Kara replied. "We'll punch a hole through their defenses and give the Revenant cover." Jack hesitated. He had already lost too many good pilots today. He couldn't risk losing Kara too. But he also knew that without action, Earth would fall. "Permission granted," Jack said. "But Kara—" "I know," Kara cut in. "Stay alive." Kara's fighter, Valkyrie, shot forward, breaking through the defensive line with Bonner right behind her. The two fighters spiraled through the chaos, plasma bolts flashing past them as they weaved between debris and enemy craft. "Target the lead capital ship," Kara ordered. "Copy that," Bonner replied, locking onto the target. The lead Narraxi ship's massive hull glowed with blue energy as it powered up its main cannon. Kara's eyes widened as the energy signature spiked. "They're going to fire." She pulled hard on the controls, her ship twisting through the void as the cannon released a blinding pulse of energy. The blast missed her ship by inches, but the shockwave sent her spinning. Alarms screamed through her cockpit. "I'm hit," Bonner shouted. Kara steadied her ship and saw Bonner's fighter trailing smoke, his left wing heavily damaged. "Bonner, eject." "Not happening," Bonner growled, trying to stabilize his ship. "I've got one more shot left." Bonner cut her off. "Kara, listen to me. You need to finish this. I'll clear the path." Bonner's ship shot forward toward the lead capital ship. He fired his last missile at the shield generator. The generator erupted in a burst of flame, exposing the ship's core. Bonner's damaged ship careened toward the capital ship's bridge. "Kara," Bonner's voice came through, calm and steady. "Tell my kid I love them, okay?" Bonner, "No." Bonner's ship collided with the capital ship's exposed core. The explosion was massive, tearing through the hull and sending fragments of debris in every direction. Kara's cockpit shook violently as the blast wave hit her ship. She gritted her teeth and fought the controls. Jack's voice broke through the static. "Kara, report." "I'm okay." Kara's voice was tight, her chest heaving. "Bonner, he's gone." Jack's hand curled into a fist. "Damn it." He steadied his breathing, forcing himself to push through the grief. "Kara, the lead ship's down. We need to finish this." Kara's hands tightened on the controls. Her ship's weapons hummed to life. "I'm on it." The Revenant decloaked, emerging from the shadows like a predator. Its cannons roared to life, firing precision plasma rounds into the heart of the Narraxi fleet. The enemy ships struggled to respond, their formation collapsing without the lead ship's command. Cull's second-in-command appeared on the command screen. His face was twisted in fury. "You think this changes anything? We are the Dominion. We are eternal." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Not today." The Revenant's AI voice echoed through the command deck. "Target locked." "Fire," Jack ordered. The Revenant's primary weapon charge, a concentrated beam of white-hot plasma. The beam shot forward, cutting clean through the enemy command ship. The ship fractured from within before erupting into a massive fireball. Debris scattered into the void as the shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Kara's squad regrouped, taking advantage of the chaos. Human fighters tore through the Narraxi ships with renewed strength. "They're retreating," an officer shouted. Jack exhaled. "Do not pursue them. Let them go." Kara's ship drifted alongside the Revenant as the last Narraxi ship disappeared into hyperspace. Jack's voice was steady. "Good work, Kara." Kara's hand trembled as she removed her flight helmet. Her eyes were wet with tears. "We lost Bonner." "I know," Jack replied. His voice softened. "But he gave us a chance." Kara closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. "What now?" Jack stared out at the wreckage, the broken remains of both human and Narraxi ships drifting through space. His gaze hardened. "Now," he said, "we prepare for the next wave." Kara's voice steadied. "And when they come back?" Jack's eyes glinted. "We'll be ready." The Revenant's engines hummed to life as it drifted toward Earth. In the distance, the shattered remains of the Narraxi fleet floated silently, a reminder that humanity, even when pushed to the edge, was not broken. Kara leaned back in her seat, her breathing steady now. Her father's voice came through the comms one last time. "We fight together, Kara. Always." Her lips curled into a small smile. "Always." The Revenant's silhouette vanished into the darkness, its cloaking field reactivating as it prepared for the next battle. Humanity had survived, but the war was far from over. Kara sat alone in the dimly lit hangar, her back against the cold metal wall of her fighter. The echoes of Bonner's last words still haunted her mind. The price of victory had been high. Too high. The squad had lost 4 more pilots during the last engagement, and the fleet was battered. Despite forcing the Narraxi to retreat, everyone knew they would return, stronger and angrier. Jack stood at the edge of the hangar, watching Kara from a distance. His heart ached for her, but he knew there was no time to grieve. Humanity's survival was hanging by a thread, and the next strike could come at any moment. "Kara," Jack said softly, stepping toward her. Kara's eyes were red, her expression hard. "You said we'd be ready." Jack sighed. "We are, but it's not enough." Kara's gaze sharpened. "Then what are we waiting for?" "We take the fight to them." Jack knelt beside her. "We don't have the firepower for a direct assault. The Revenant's cloak can only protect us for so long. And the fleet, it's running on fumes." Kara stood up, her fists clenched. "So what's the plan?" Before Jack could answer, the tactical officer's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, you need to see this." Jack and Kara rushed to the command deck. The holographic map displayed new activity, hyperspace signatures appearing near the edge of the solar system. But they weren't Narraxi. "They're human," the officer said. "Impossible," Jack whispered. "No other human fleet survived the last attack." The transmission came through, and a face appeared on the screen. An older man with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. His uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Corps, a division that was thought to have been wiped out years ago. "This is Commander Elias Varick of the Iron Dawn," the man said. "I'm here to discuss terms." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Terms?" "We've been watching your fight," Varick said. "Impressive work with the Revenant, but it's not enough to win this war." Jack's expression hardened. "What are you offering?" Varick's lips curled into a thin smile, a chance to strike at the heart of the Dominion. Kara's eyes widened. "You know where their command center is." Varick's gaze darkened. We have intelligence on their primary warship, the Dominion Prime. It's the heart of their fleet. Destroy it, and their entire war effort collapses. Jack studied Varric's face carefully. And how did you get this information? Varric's smile didn't fade. We have a source. Jack's instincts screamed that something wasn't right, but humanity was out of options. How do we get close enough? The Iron Dawn has an experimental cloaking field, Varric said. It's more advanced than anything you've seen. We can get you close, but you'll need to deliver the kill shot. Jack exchanged a look with Kara. It sounded too good to be true, and that's exactly what made it dangerous. But Jack knew they didn't have the luxury of saying no. Prepare for docking, Jack said. Varric nodded. Welcome to the winning side. An hour later, Varric's ship docked with the Revenant. Jack, Kara, and the senior officers met Varric and his team in the hangar. Varric's men wore sleek black armor, their faces obscured by mirrored visors. Nice ship, Varric said, running a hand along the hull of the Revenant. Jack's expression remained cold. Let's keep this professional. Varric's smile tightened. Of course. Varric's men began interfacing with the Revenant systems, uploading tactical data and adjusting the cloaking field. Kara watched as Varric approached her. You're Kara Riker, Varric said. The ace pilot. Kara's expression didn't change. You've done your homework. Varric's smile was sharp. You remind me of your mother. Kara's eyes narrowed. You knew her. Varric's smile faded. We served together. She was one of the best. Jack's voice cut through the tension. Enough. We need to focus. Varric nodded. Of course. Hours later, the Revenant and the Iron Dawn slipped into the shadows of space, their cloaking fields active. The Dominion Prime loomed in the distance, a massive city-sized warship with spiked edges and glowing energy veins running along its hull. Jack stood at the command deck, his gaze hard. Once we drop the cloak, we'll have 30 seconds to fire before they react. Kara strapped into her fighter. Bonner's seat next to her was empty, and the silence felt heavier than any gravity field. Jack's voice came through the comms. Kara, you're leading the strike team. I'm ready. Good luck. The Revenant's cloak dropped. Instantly, the Dominion Prime's defenses activated. Hundreds of smaller fighter ships swarmed toward them. Break formation, Kara shouted. Hit them hard. Laser fire erupted in every direction. Kara's fighter spun through the chaos, her weapons blazing. Explosions flashed across her cockpit as enemy fighters burst apart. I'm going for the core, Kara shouted. The Dominion Prime's hull split open, revealing the glowing core beneath. Kara locked onto it, firing missiles. Suddenly, Varric's voice cut through the comms. Belay that order. Kara's eyes widened. What? Varric's face appeared on her screen. The core is not to be destroyed. Jack's voice cut in. Varric, what are you doing? Varric's soldiers turned toward Jack's crew, weapons drawn. I'm securing our future. Jack's eyes darkened. You're working with them. Varric's smile was cold. Humanity's survival requires compromise. Kara's hands tightened on the controls. You sold us out. Varric's tone was calm. The Dominion offered us a place in their new order, a seat at the table, in exchange for your surrender. Kara's ship swerved as enemy fighters closed in. Dad, they're targeting us. Jack's voice was hard. All units, fire on the Iron Dawn. The Revenant's cannons roared to life, blasting Varric's ship as it broke formation. Varric's voice came through one last time. You could have saved yourselves. Kara's ship rocketed toward the core. I'm taking the shot. Kara, Jack shouted. I've got this. Kara fired. The missile struck the core dead center. The Dominion Prime's hull fractured, blue energy rippling through the structure. Kara, get out of there, Jack shouted. Kara's engines flared as she pulled away. The Dominion Prime detonated behind her, sending a shockwave through the fleet. Varric's ship was caught in the blast. Kara steadied her ship, breathing hard. "Dad, it's done." Jack's voice was calm. "Good work." Kara's gaze hardened. "Varric almost cost us everything." Jack's voice was steady, but he didn't. Kara leaned back in her seat, her breath slowing. "What now?" Jack's voice was cold. "Now, we finish this war." The bridge of the Revenant was tense and quiet. The destruction of the Dominion Prime had sent a shockwave through the entire battlefield, but the war was far from over. Jack stood at the center of the command deck, his hands gripping the edge of the console as tactical readouts scrolled across the screen. The Dominion fleet was still out there, weakened but regrouping fast. "Sir," the tactical officer said, "we're picking up new hyperspace signatures, multiple large ships." Jack's eyes narrowed. "How many?" 15. "No, 20. Kara's voice came through the comms. "Dad, that's an invasion force." Jack's jaw tightened. "They're bringing everything they have." Kara's ship hovered just outside the Revenant, her squadron rearming after the last battle. The adrenaline was still burning through her veins, but there was no time to rest. She watched as the Dominion ships emerged from hyperspace. Massive, spiked warships lined with glowing blue energy veins. Smaller fighters poured out from their launch bays, forming attack formations. "This isn't a battle anymore," Kara said. "It's a last stand." Jack's voice was steady. "Not yet. We still have one shot at this." Kara's eyes narrowed. "What are you thinking?" "The Dominion fleet's command signal is coming from that dreadnought in the center," Jack said. "We cut off the head. The body dies." Kara's ship turned toward the largest ship, a massive black vessel bristling with cannons and flanked by escort ships. Its core pulsed with a steady blue light. "That thing is a fortress," Kara said. "We won't survive a direct assault." Jack's expression hardened. "We won't need to." "Tactical, prepare the Revenant's main cannon." "Sir, the main cannon is still damaged from the last engagement," the tactical officer said. "I know," Jack replied, "but we just need one shot." Kara's voice sharpened. "Dad, you can't be serious. If the cannon misfires—" "I know the risks," Jack said, "but it's the only way." The Dominion fleet surged toward them. Red warning lights flared across the bridge as the Revenant's shields absorbed the first wave of enemy fire. Explosions lit up the blackness of space as human fighters tangled with Dominion interceptors. Kara's squadron streaked past the Revenant's hull, opening fire on the approaching Dominion ships. Missiles and plasma bursts exploded in every direction. "Hold the line," Kara shouted. "Captain, the cannon is ready," the tactical officer called out. Jack's eyes narrowed. "All power to the main cannon. Lock on to the command ship." Targeting locked. The Revenant's hull began to glow as energy charged through its core. The ship's engines strained as they diverted power to the weapon. The Dominion fleet's cannons flared to life, hammering the Revenant's shields. "Shields at 30%. Kara," Jack shouted, "we need you to open a hole in their defenses." "I'm on it." Kara's ship accelerated, her squadron following close behind. "Squad, form up. Aim for the dorsal turrets." The human fighters swarmed toward the command ship. Dominion turrets rotated and fired plasma bursts, cutting down 2 human ships in an instant. Kara gritted her teeth. "Stay sharp." Kara's ship spiraled through the incoming fire, her pulse cannons blazing. She struck the nearest turret, blasting it apart. "That's one." Another fighter exploded next to her. Kara's eyes widened. "Damn it." Jack's voice was sharp. "We're out of time." Kara's hands tightened around the controls. "Then we make time." She fired her afterburners and charged straight toward the command ship's shield array. Red warning lights flashed across her cockpit. "Come on, hold together." A missile lock warning flared on her screen. A Dominion interceptor locked onto her. "Kara, break off," Jack shouted. "Negative. I got this." The missile fired. Kara spun her ship, deploying countermeasures, but the missile was too fast. An explosion flared behind her. Kara's eyes widened. Another human ship had intercepted the missile, taking the hit. Whoa! It's Anderson. A voice crackled through the comms. Finish it, Riker. Kara's chest tightened, but her hand stayed steady. Copy that. She fired her cannons at the shield array. The energy field flickered, then collapsed. Shields are down, Kara shouted. Jack's eyes narrowed. Fire the cannon. The Revenant's main cannon roared to life. A beam of pure white energy erupted from the ship's bow, cutting through the void and slamming into the command ship's hull. The dreadnought's exterior fractured and split apart. Explosions cascaded across its body. The command ship's core pulsed violently, then detonated. A massive shockwave rippled through the Dominion fleet. Smaller ships veered off course, their systems failing. On the bridge of the Revenant, the crew erupted into cheers. Jack's expression remained hard. Status. Dominion fleet is breaking apart, the tactical officer shouted. They're in full retreat. Kara's ship hovered near the debris field, her breathing shaky. We did it. Jack's voice came through the comms. You did it. Kara's hands trembled as the tension left her body. Anderson. Jack's voice softened. He knew the cost. Kara's eyes closed for a moment. Then she straightened. What now? Jack's tone hardened. We pushed them out of our system. For good. Kara's ship accelerated, her squadron forming up behind her. The surviving Dominion ships turned to retreat, but the human fleet surged forward in pursuit. For Anderson, Kara whispered. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Plasma bursts streaked toward the fleeing enemy ships. Explosions flared through the void. On the Revenant's bridge, Jack stood tall, watching the remnants of the Dominion fleet collapse. No mercy. The Revenant's cannons roared one last time. The last Dominion warship exploded, debris scattering into the blackness. Silence followed. Then Kara's voice came through the comms. It's over. Jack's gaze softened. Not yet, but it's a damn good start. The stars stretched out before them, cold and endless, but for the first time in years, the darkness didn't feel so empty. The battlefield was quiet now. Pieces of twisted metal and shattered hulls floated through the blackness of space, the remains of the Dominion fleet scattered across the void. Fires still burned in the wreckage of the Revenant's hull, casting an eerie orange glow against the cold backdrop of the stars. The cost of victory hung in the silence, heavy and suffocating. Jack stood on the damaged bridge, his hand resting on the back of a broken console. His uniform was torn, stained with blood and sweat. His gaze was fixed on the shattered remains of the Dominion fleet drifting in the distance. The tactical officer approached him, his steps hesitant. Sir, we've confirmed it. The last Dominion warship has been destroyed. Jack's eyes didn't move from the viewport. Casualties. The officer's expression darkened. Over 70% of the fleet is gone. Most of the remaining ships are heavily damaged. Engineering is reporting that the Revenant's main cannon is offline, possibly for good. Jack's jaw tightened. Survivors. Search and rescue teams are still working. The officer replied. But it doesn't look good. Jack closed his eyes for a moment. He could still see Anderson's ship breaking apart in front of Kara. He could still hear the screams over the comms as Bonner and the others were lost. Victory hadn't come without a price, and it was a price humanity might not survive. The comms panel crackled to life. Admiral Riker, a voice said, we're picking up a distress signal from Kara's fighter. Jack's eyes widened. Patch it through. Kara's voice came through, shaky but alive. I'm here. My systems are fried, and I'm running on emergency power. Jack's hand tightened on the console. Can you eject? A pause. Negative. The ejection system is damaged. Jack's chest tightened. Hold on. We're coming for you. Jack turned toward the helm. Get me a shuttle. Now. Sir, we're still under repair. We can't spare. Now. Jack's voice was sharp. Minutes later, Jack was in a shuttle, steering it toward the wreckage. Kara's ship was drifting near the remains of the Dominion dreadnought, its hull battered and trailing sparks. The shuttle's lights reflected off the scared metal as Jack guided it closer. "Kara, I'm locking onto you," Jack said. "Copy that," Kara replied. Jack activated the docking clamps. "Hold steady." The shuttle's mechanical arms reached out, locking onto the side of Kara's ship. Jack left the pilot's seat and climbed through the docking corridor. He forced the emergency hatch open and pulled himself inside Kara's cockpit. Kara was slumped in the seat, her face pale and covered in sweat. Her helmet was cracked, and her breathing was shallow. "Kara," Jack gripped her shoulders. She opened her eyes weakly. "Took you long enough." Jack's mouth curled into a small smile. "You scared the hell out of me." Kara's hand reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm. "Did we win?" Jack's smile faded. "Yes, but at a cost." Kara's expression darkened. "Anderson." Jack's face hardened. "Gone." Kara's eyes closed for a moment. When she opened them again, they were sharp. "Then let's make sure it wasn't for nothing." Jack helped her out of the cockpit. She winced as she put weight on her leg, but she pushed through it. Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulder and helped her into the shuttle. The shuttle docked back with the Revenant. Kara and Jack stepped onto the damaged bridge, the surviving officers turning to face them. The atmosphere was heavy with exhaustion and loss. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, "most of the fleet's systems are offline. We've lost communication with the outer colonies." Jack's gaze sharpened. "And the Dominion?" "No signs of reinforcements." Jack exhaled. "They're running." Kara's voice was quiet. "But they'll be back." Jack's expression darkened. "Not if we rebuild first." Kara leaned on the console. "How do we rebuild when we barely survived this?" Jack's voice was hard. "One step at a time." The Revenant's engines hummed weakly as the ship drifted through the wreckage field. Rescue shuttles moved through the debris, scanning for survivors. Jack's gaze turned toward the viewport. "Patch me through to the fleet." The communications officer nodded. "You're live, sir." Jack's voice carried through the damaged hulls of the surviving ships. "This is Admiral Jack Wrecker." His tone was steady, unwavering. "We have won today, but victory has come at a cost. We lost friends. We lost family. But we stood together, and we endured." He took a breath. "The Dominion thought they could break us. They thought they could shatter our will. But they were wrong. Humanity does not surrender. We fight. And we survive." Kara's gaze softened as Jack's words filled the bridge. "We rebuild from the ashes," Jack said. "And when the Dominion returns, and they will return, we will be ready." A quiet murmur of approval rippled through the bridge. Jack's gaze turned toward Kara. "We survived because we fought together. Because of people like Bonner, like Anderson. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten." Kara's throat tightened. She thought of Anderson's last words, of Bonner's empty seat, of the pilots who would never return. "We honor them by standing strong," Jack said. "We honor them by making sure humanity rises again." The communications officer cut the channel. A heavy silence followed. Kara leaned back against the console, her arms crossed. "So what now?" she asked quietly. Jack's eyes remained cold and steady. "We rebuild the fleet. We gather survivors. We prepare for the next fight. And if the Dominion comes back stronger?" Kara asked. Jack's gaze hardened. "Then we make sure we're stronger too." Kara's expression sharpened. "And if they come in peace?" Jack's smile was cold. "They won't." Kara exhaled and looked out at the drifting remains of the Dominion fleet. "We won." Jack's gaze followed hers. This time. Outside the viewport, the blackness of space stretched endlessly. Fires flickered in the debris field, casting dying sparks into the void. The human fleet was broken, but not beaten. Kara's hand rested on the console. "We're not done yet." Jack's expression was steady. "No, we're not." The Revenant's engines hummed louder as the surviving human ships turned toward the edge of the system. Damaged but alive, they pushed forward into the darkness, toward whatever future waited beyond the stars. The Revenant drifted through the void, its hull scarred and broken. Fires had been extinguished, and the surviving crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage. The hum of the ship's engines was weak and uneven, but it was still moving, a testament to human resilience. Jack stood alone on the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back. The stars stretched out endlessly before him, cold and distant. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Tired eyes, a hard expression, and the weight of countless losses etched into the lines of his face. Kara stepped onto the deck behind him. Her left arm was in a sling, and bruises lined her face. She moved stiffly, but her eyes were sharp. Jack's gaze shifted toward her as she stepped up beside him. "How's the arm?" Jack asked. Kara shrugged. "Better than the ship." Jack's mouth curled into a faint smile. "That's not saying much." Kara's gaze drifted toward the wreckage outside. Pieces of destroyed Dominion ships floated in the distance, slowly pulled toward the gravity of a nearby moon. "It's hard to believe we survived that." Jack's expression darkened. "Barely." Kara's gaze narrowed. "But we won." Jack's eyes hardened. "Did we?" Kara turned toward him. "We stopped them." Jack's mouth pressed into a thin line. "For now." Kara's brow furrowed. "You really think they'll come back?" Jack's gaze didn't waver. "Yes." Kara's fists tightened at her sides. "Then we'll be ready." Jack's eyes softened. "You sound just like your mother." Kara's expression softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in her eyes. "She'd be proud of you, you know." Jack's gaze lowered. "Would she?" Kara stepped closer. "You led us to victory. You kept humanity alive." Jack's jaw tightened. "At what cost?" A silence fell between them. Kara's gaze shifted toward the stars. "Do you think we'll ever know peace?" Jack's eyes were hard. "Peace isn't something you win. It's something you fight to protect." Kara's mouth tightened. "And if we can't hold it?" Jack's gaze sharpened. "Then we fight until we can." The deck's comm panel buzzed. "Admiral, this is tactical control." We had a long-range signal coming through. Jack's eyes narrowed. "Source?" "Unclear," the officer replied. "But it's not human." Jack's gaze darkened. "Patch it through." Static crackled through the speakers. A low, distorted voice filled the room, deep and unnatural. "Humans," the voice hissed. "You think you've won." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Identify yourself." The voice ignored him. "You fought well, but you have only delayed the inevitable." Kara's hands curled into fists. "Is this the Dominion?" "No," Jack said quietly. The voice deepened, filled with static and malice. "We watched from the dark. We saw you defy the Dominion. Impressive, for a lesser species." Jack's gaze sharpened. "Who are you?" The voice's tone shifted, almost amused. "We are the architects of the void, the creators of the Dominion, the ones who shaped the stars before you crawled from your dirt." Jack's chest tightened. "You made the Dominion." "We gave them purpose," the voice replied. "And now they have failed us." Jack's jaw clenched. "And what's your purpose now?" "Correction." The voice's tone darkened. "Your extinction." The signal cut out. Silence followed. Kara's eyes widened. What the hell was that? Jack's expression hardened. "A problem." The tactical officer's voice cut through the comms. "Admiral, we're detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships inbound." Jack's hands curled into fists. "How many?" 10. "No. 20. 50. The officer's voice broke. Jack's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "Sir, I don't know what I'm looking at." Jack strode toward the tactical station, Kara following close behind. The display flickered, showing a growing cluster of red signals at the edge of the system. Shapes emerged on the screen. Massive, jagged ships bristling with unfamiliar energy signatures. Jack's heart pounded. Magnify. The image sharpened, revealing ships unlike anything Jack had ever seen. Black, elongated, with shifting metallic surfaces that seemed to absorb the light around them. Energy pulsed through their hulls like veins, casting an eerie blue glow. Kara's eyes widened. That's not Dominion tech. No, Jack said quietly. It's worse. The tactical officer's voice trembled. They're on an intercept course. Jack's gaze darkened. How long? 10 minutes. Jack's jaw tightened. All hands to battle stations. Sir, the fleet is in no condition to fight, the tactical officer said. Jack's gaze hardened. We don't have a choice. Kara's eyes narrowed. We can't win this fight. Jack's mouth curled into a grim smile. We've heard that before. Kara's jaw clenched. What's the plan? Jack's gaze sharpened. We hold the line. We give the fleet time to escape. Kara's eyes widened. That's a suicide mission. Jack's expression didn't change. We don't have another option. Kara's gaze hardened. Then I'm with you. Jack's hand rested on her shoulder. I know. The tactical officer's voice cut through the comms. Sir, they've locked weapons. Jack's gaze narrowed. Shields up. Weapons hot. Outside the viewport, the alien ships loomed larger, massive shadows drifting through the stars. Strange blue energy flickered along their hulls as they closed in. Jack's eyes were cold. Target the lid ship. Sir, do it. The Revenant's cannons hummed to life, the damaged systems struggling to generate power. The tactical officer's hands hovered over the firing controls. Fire, Jack shouted. The Revenant's forward cannons flared, bolts of plasma streaking toward the alien ships. The energy bolts slammed into the lead ship's hull and disappeared. The ship's surface shimmered and absorbed the blast. Kara's eyes widened. What the hell was that? The alien ship's surface pulsed. A wave of blue energy rippled outward, and then the Revenant's hull shuddered. Direct hit, the tactical officer shouted. Damage report, Jack barked. Shields down to 50%. Jack's jaw tightened. Return fire. The Revenant's cannons roared again. Plasma bursts slammed into the alien ships, but they absorbed the energy without damage. They're adapting, Kara said. Jack's expression darkened. Then we'll have to get creative. The alien ships advanced, their hulls glowing brighter. Jack's gaze remained steady. Come on, you bastards. The lead ship's hull flared. A beam of blue light erupted from its core. Incoming. The tactical officer shouted. Jack's eyes sharpened. Brace for impact. The beam struck the Revenant's hull. The ship buckled. Metal groaned. Sparks flared from the consoles. Jack's voice cut through the chaos. Hold the line. Kara's voice was steady. We've faced worse. Jack's gaze was hard. Not like this. Outside the viewport, the alien ships closed in. The darkness pressed in around them. But Jack's eyes were sharp and cold. Come on, he whispered. Let's see what you've got.